In January 2002, a 25-year-old woman named Tatyana came from Minsk to Moscow. One frosty winter day, a young man approached her and asked what was the reason for her sad mood. He suggested they get acquainted, and then, on a cheerful note, apparently to lift her spirits, added, "It's my birthday today." Apparently this phrase had a magical effect on the girl, and after a short while the talkative birthday boy settled in, not just anywhere but right in Tatyana's apartment in a building on Leningradsky Prospect. However, this visit did not end with a festive dinner, but with the robbery of the trusting Minsk woman and the taking of her life by strangulation. Several valuable items were stolen. The girl's body was found on January 18th, tied up with a ligature mark on her neck. March 2003. 22-year-old Svetlana also came to Moscow, but from Omsk to visit her relatives. The young woman practiced Oriental dance and had many life plans, such as dreaming of becoming a hairdresser. But then her cousin Ira intervened in her dreams and suggested working with a dance group performing at different venues. She was full of enthusiasm. Svetlana liked this, and her love for the new craft gradually grew. She was earning a decent amount of money, part of which she sent to her parents. Everything was great in her personal life as well. The girl started dating a well-off guy, and after getting their parents' blessing, they were even planning to get married. Life was showing Svetlana only its brightest sides, but one day a car stopped in front of her on the street, and some stranger offered to give her a ride home. The bride-to-be agreed, thereby crossing out all hopes for a wedding in the near future. The driver deviated from the planned route and cold-bloodedly dealt with the girl. He assaulted her and then strangled her with a scarf. A few days later, in one of the Moscow apartments, the mother of 20-year-old Yekaterina began to worry when she realized that her daughter was late at work. The bad feeling turned out to be completely justified. The girl's body was found in a wooded area. She had been killed almost the same way as the previous victims. First, she was assaulted, then strangled. April 2003, walking the streets of Moscow is becoming more and more dangerous. A fourth body was added to the 3 previously found. It was discovered in a rented apartment on Matros Zhelezniak Boulevard. The victim, 34-year-old Nataliya, came from Novosibirsk and apparently also couldn't resist the charms of the mysterious ladies' man wandering the alleys of Moscow in search of women. Nataliya was strangled. It became clear that this is the maniac's preferred method of killing. The investigation had more to address. At the same time, a gruesome discovery was made in the city park, a policeman's wife's body. As it would later turn out, an argument broke out between her and her husband during a car ride. It was so bad that the woman, unable to endure it any longer, was forced to leave the car and walk along the side of the road. She wandered aimlessly until she was caught. The maniac gained the trust of the woman, who was seeking understanding at that moment, and carried out his intentions. If the unfortunate woman had listened to her husband's pleas to come back, she would have survived, of course. July 2003. 2 bodies were found at once. Both victims were 28 years old. They were also strangled, one with a rope, the other with a belt. One of the bodies was found on the grounds of the botanical garden. The crimes occurred on the 1st and 4th, just 3 days apart. On July 21, Lydia, a 43-year-old Muscovite and longtime alcoholic, strolled down a city street with bottles clinking in her bag. Suddenly, a reproachful voice from a stranger said, "Isn't that a bit much for just one person like you?" The woman wasn't greedy, so she gladly invited the man to her place. "Come over and we'll have a drink together." But the guest reacted to Lydia's kindness in a completely unexpected way. He dealt with her, and when her son Anton, who was 13, came home, the boy was faced with a terrifying sight. The criminal also killed him, getting rid of an unnecessary witness. Anton's body was found hanging from an interior door. And before you find out what happened next, like this video, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any new strange and scary stories. Also, subscribe to the Telegram channel /Naughty. It has a different format, lots of content and its own vibe. Entry is not allowed for the faint of heart, but if you're not afraid, the link is below the video. Soon, terrifying rumors about a maniac spread throughout the city. Despite this, law enforcement did not consider it necessary to raise the alarm, since in their opinion, the crimes were not connected to each other. Moreover, for some unknown reason, the attacks on women stopped. At the same time, a certain 25-year-old Vladimir Mirgorod was sentenced by the Preobrazhensky court to 6 years in a penal colony for assault and robbery. The girl who suffered indecent acts from Mirgorod and his friend did not stay silent and directly reported her offenders to the police. In January 2005, Mirgorod was sentenced by the Preobrazhensky district court to 6 years in prison. He was not suspected of a series of brutal crimes with fatal outcomes, even though after his arrest such crimes stopped in the north and northwest of Moscow. In July 2010, the maniac was freed from prison. During one of his regular visits to the district police officer, he casually let slip that he had more serious offenses to his name, namely taking lives. This confession alerted the investigator. They started paying more attention to Mirgorod. Very soon, an astonishing fact was discovered. His fingerprints matched those found at crime scenes from the period between 2002 and 2004. The person who terrorized Moscow for 2 years was found. It's unknown how many more women and girls would have suffered if the maniac hadn't exposed himself through carelessness. At the same time, it's worth noting that in most cases, Mirgorod still managed to skillfully cover his tracks and outsmart the police officers who weren't particularly proactive to begin with. As it turned out, Vladimir was actually glad that his secret had finally come to light. He passionately wanted to be exposed so he could be free from his inner torment. Confirmation of his guilt in the committed crimes did not take long to arrive. However, he confessed to only 8 episodes, and the investigators had to remind him of just as many other murders. Mirgorod's involvement in the atrocities was proven thanks to DNA analysis. It turned out that he used various improvised means to take the lives of the unfortunate girls. A bathrobe belt, a lady's purse strap, a scarf, an electric cord, such a variety of items. After the new detention and arrest of the former convict, it became necessary to study his biography. Vladimir Viktorovich Mirgorod was born in Moscow on November 1, 1979. He lived with his family in the Timiryazevsky district, near the Petrovsko-Razumovskaya metro station. His father worked as a builder, and his mother was an accountant. Contrary to all arguments that maniacs grow up in unfavorable family environments where parents constantly humiliate them, in this case the circumstances were completely different. Vova's parents surrounded him with love and care since he was the only child in the family. While studying at school, the future maniac achieved success and was always striving for something new. And after finishing his studies, he entered the Institute of Steel and Alloys. He was supposed to become an engineer, but he never did, because already in his second year he dropped out and took up another trade, delivering cargo. He spent the money he earned on gifts for girls, whom he skillfully charmed. In addition, it became known that he had a girlfriend. A photo of Mirgorod, where he is standing shirtless with a languid, seductive look, still graces one of the dating websites. And everything would be fine, if only you didn't know the terrible secret that the main character of this photo had been hiding for 2 years. Everyone around knew Vladimir as a well-mannered, intellectually developed, cheerful and sociable guy. He was known as the life of the party and one of the guys. Naturally, after the shocking details about the murder and Mirgorod being given the well-deserved status of a maniac, none of his acquaintances could believe it. In an interview, Mirgorod, smiling, revealed his motive. He took lives because he saw no reason to restrain himself and because no one stopped him. On contacting the victims, he casually said, "I just approached and introduced myself. Sometimes they approached me. We had a drink, there was no aggression. Then, it's not exactly a blackout, more like a fog." He didn't even remember some of the victims because everything mostly happened in the dark, in the evenings. In his own words, he didn't feel any pangs of conscience, and his restorative therapy was a calm and long sleep. Fear was the last thing on the maniac's mind when committing his crimes. Taking a life seemed completely ordinary to him. "This doesn't go against human nature in any way," explained Mirgorod. "People take lives literally and figuratively. Just watch television." He only partially repented for his crimes, but he never asked the victims' relatives for forgiveness. The Strangler, as Mirgorod later came to be called, was found sane, and on January 30, 2012, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. The first place where Dushegub was held was the Black Berkut colony in the Sverdlovsk region, and then he was transferred to another colony with the harmless sounding name Snezinka in the Khabarovsk region.